Hey, it's Lee and welcome to a tour of my island Ravenwood. Now this island is such a milestone for me since it's the very first island where I streamed or recorded the entire decorating process. It was honestly so much fun to decorate most of this island live with chat, and I can't wait to decorate more islands in the future. So Ravenwood is a fall island with fairy tale references set in the medieval times. I actually don't know how many references there are, but it might be fun for y'all to guess the total of references in the comments below. And so I chose the flag over there to symbolize these fairy tale references. Overall, it was really fun to include them in my builds, but I do wish that I added more references or even copied certain builds from movies. Anyway, let's take a look at the map. Even though there's a huge castle in the center of the island, I still managed to keep the map relatively natural looking. Just ignore that really straight cliff over there. As typical of my islands, there are a few viewing spots to note, but I'll make sure to cover them in this video. As for my villagers, I tried to stick to the color scheme of red, brown, and black, but I had to make some exceptions to the lineup to fit the storyline of the island itself. And so we have Nan, Poppy, Pecan, Dobie, Marlo, Sterling, Blair, Elvis, Cole, and Kyle. And with that, let's get started with the tour. So for this entrance, I wanted there to be only one way through, so I blocked off the entire right side with a cliff and hid resident services from the view with the decorations. We can also already see the castle from here. So to the right by the airport, we have some weapon deliveries to the knights who live by the entrance. Speaking of knights, we have Cole's house over here. Because he is a lazy villager, we can think of him as more of an apprentice knight, but he still tries his best to protect the island. As you can see, he has his armor outside ready to go if needed. And then, to the left, we have Sterling's home, and he is the proper knight of the castle. He is actually one of the villagers I made an exception for, since his colors as a villager don't match the color scheme, but his looks as a knight fit the theme very well. Right next to Sterling's home is a little training grounds for the knights. Because there aren't any training dummies in this game, I used the scarecrows to represent them, and I honestly really like how this small build turned out. Then heading over here, we can get a nice view of the castle entrance with both houses in the frame. This frame was honestly really pivotal in setting up the starting layout of the castle. Heading up, we finally enter the castle, and coming up to the fountain, we can get a really good view of the whole plaza. This entire castle build was honestly such a struggle to finish, and I genuinely wanted to quit this theme and reset, but thankfully I stuck it out to the end and built something that I was really proud of. To the left we have a bit of plaza filler decorations with some seating areas, and entering this gate actually leads us to the Able sisters. As you can see, the Able sisters are actually doing a promotion of dresses for the nobles of the castle. And then heading to the center of the plaza, we have a little market area where the vendors are selling a variety of goods. Going up here and exiting the castle leads us to a little natural filler area that includes a viewpoint to one of my favorite builds of this island. To the left over here, we have a river with some ducks and some snacks should you wish to feed them. Then, for the main event of this area, let's climb up these ladders to get a really nice view of the witch's abode. As you can see, we have a really enchanting build with a rock garden, some ruin decorations and butterfly models, and lily of the valley flowers scattered around the area. This build took me a while to do since there was so much going back and forth from the area to this viewpoint, but it was honestly so worth it at the end. If you are interested in seeing that process, feel free to check out the long play video I linked in the description below. Coming back down to the castle and heading to the right, we can see some more plaza decorations and gifts I left for anyone who wants to visit. Here's also where I placed the museum, and you can think of the museum as basically a huge library in the castle. Just don't actually go into the museum because there's nothing in there. To the right is a small alleyway that leads us to the throne room of the castle. Here we have a little personal library for the royals and the king's most precious weapon in the center. Going up the inclines and going to the center actually gets us a really good view of where Queen Blair and King Elvis reside. I actually really love the symmetry of this build, and that crown way up high is definitely the highlight of this frame. I also love that the trees I placed for other builds can be seen from here. If you were to head to the right, that actually leads us to the farm neighborhood, but for the purposes of this tour, let's head down to the resident services instead. So for this area, I decided to extend the little market build from the plaza with some food stalls to the side. Then, exiting the castle down here and crossing the bridge, we approach the campsite. And this is where we actually see the very first fairy tale reference that I included in this island. On the left, we can see two frogs that represent the Princess and the Frog movie. In the background, we have the dress that Tiana wore when she first met Naveen as a frog, and her tiara here in the front. Just don't look at the mannequin head. Now following this path to the tent, we just have a small cozy campfire seating build, and I left some burliness on this Moroccan footrest to represent beignets. I also made sure to invite Sasha into the campsite as an homage to meeting him on our villager hunt. Now going up this incline is just a little landbridge moment. There's nothing too special on this landbridge besides some natural fillers and decorations, but I really wanted to include this because I wanted it to lead to a really nice view of the next build, which is the squirrel farm neighborhood. This is another one of my favorite builds of this island because of the overall layout. I spent a lot of time figuring out where I wanted the houses and bridge to go, and I paid attention to the placement of the wind turbines to create a dynamic background. Now, let's take a closer look at the build. Over here to the right is the peninsula, and I laid out a small scattered pumpkin farm to extend the farming motif to this area. You also have a little bear resting and reading some fairy tales. Back to the farm, we have 3 plots. The first plot in the center is full of sheep and potatoes, and to keep the sheep in check, we have 2 herd dogs watching the area. On the right, we have Poppy's home, and she just has a small tomato plot to match the red of her house. And then, walking to the left, Pecan has a sugarcane plot. I specifically chose the sugarcane here so that they properly show up from the viewing platform. Once again, crossing this bridge leads us back to the throne room of the castle, so let's head towards the incline. Now heading up will actually lead us to the wolf neighborhood, and this is where we have a bunch of references. To the right, you might have already guessed it, but we have the 3 little pigs, each with their respective homes. As you can see, only the piggy whose house is made of bricks is left with a standing home. To the center of this build is just a small filler seating area where the wolves like to gather for meals. And here is a closer look at the pigs' homes. I wasn't too sure about this layout at first, but I think it turned out pretty nicely in the end. There isn't much to the back besides some filler decoration, so let's head towards the left. Now this house on the right belongs to Kyle, and he's actually the one responsible for bullying the piggies, while Dobie on the left is the one who bullied the Red Riding Hood. As you can see, we have her iconic hood, shoes, and basket, and next to Dobie's house is actually Grandma's dress. Before we continue to the left, let's head back down here to where the apple orchard is. But be warned, because this is no ordinary orchard. These are actually all poisonous apples. And I really wanted to include this motif because they are so common in fairy tales. Following the path over here, we can actually get a really nice frame of this area. Despite this being a filler build, I actually really like how full this area looks with all the apple trees. And honestly, it was worth the time we spent on stream to build this. Now going back up is a small Goldilocks reference. Here we have the 3 bears and their porridges with an empty seat saved up for Goldilocks herself. Then crossing the bridge leads us to the witch's home. We already saw a preview of this back at the viewing platform next to the castle, but let's take a closer look. As you can see, all the cliffs are fully decorated to make up the backdrop, and we have some glowing moss scattered along the area just to enhance the magical vibes of this area. Now despite what this sign says, let's actually take that risk and enter the house. Now right off the bat, we can see that the witch does not like any visitors. There are so many signs all around the room warning anyone who dares enter to leave right away. Honestly, this is a pretty simple build, but it's definitely one of the most creative interiors I've done. I usually do a typical living room build for the main room, but for this island specifically, I wanted to try something different. Now going down to the basement, we have the witch's spell room. This room is pretty much covered in magical vines that enhance the witch's power. In the back center of the room, we also have a little mirror on the wall reference. This is probably my favorite room of the house because it's the cleanest and most color coordinated. Now going upstairs, we have the witch's bedroom. Once again, we see some dead bodies because why are you trespassing in her room? And then to further bring in the motif of poisonous apples from earlier, I included some dropped apples. To be honest, I really struggled with this build since I had no real idea what to put as fillers, but I'm pretty pleased with how this turned out. Heading back outside and crossing this bridge to the left leads us to another land bridge. But before we head over there, let's head down this incline to the dark sunken neighborhood. The first home we encounter is Nance, and she, as the alchemy queen of this island, is selling potions out in the front. Then, following the path around the lake, we can see 5 gravestones in the center. These gravestones actually represent the villagers that we had to let go to achieve our final lineup, but don't be worried because they're actually still alive doing their own things elsewhere. And now we approach Marlo's home. Marlo is actually one of the reasons why I wanted to do this type of theme, since I've always wanted him on an island but never had the chance to include him. Now for his job on the island, he actually takes care of the gravestones and makes sure that the area remains tidy. Walking along this landbridge, we can see the magical essence from the witch's home spreading with the glowing moss around the area. But other than that, these are just some natural fillers. Going over here, we can actually get a really nice view of the sunken neighborhood. Now this is probably my favorite build of the island because I just love how everything ties in together. I especially love how full the background looks and the movement the windmills add. To be honest, this entire build actually took so long to do. In the long play video I have for this build, I actually cut out the footage of me filling in the cliffs in the background since the entire footage was already 6 hours long. And to the left, we have a little Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs reference. We just have them mining this cave and enjoying some lunch. Even though this is a small build, I actually think it's pretty cute and it always makes me happy to look at it. Walking down this incline is a small transitional area, but to the left, we can see that Cinderella has her carriage parked. Even though white isn't necessarily part of the color scheme, I made an exception just to include this reference. I also represented the fairy godmother with this wand over here. And here we have the Renaissance Fair with Nook's Cranny. There are plenty of stalls selling various imported goods for the people of this island. And to the left, we just have a small filler duck pond. Now heading towards this cliff here, we can actually climb the ladder and get a good view of the entire festival. This was also the perfect opportunity to include the Excalibur reference because I thought it made the perfect centerpiece. Now attendees of the festival can try their luck at pulling the sword out of the stone. I also really like how the layout looks with all the plain party lights arches scattered in the area. Now going back down and heading to the right, we have a little stables build where the attendees can borrow horses to ride. Crossing this bridge to the right will lead us back to the plaza on the Able Sisters side, so with that, the island tour is officially over. If you made it this far into the tour, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this tour and that the builds of this island gave you some inspiration for your own island. If you are interested in the decorating process for any of these builds, you can find the full playlist of me building this island linked down below. Let me know what your favorite build is in the comments as well. This was my first time ever doing an island full of references and it was honestly really fun. If you are interested in what other island I make in the future, feel free to subscribe and follow me on Twitch. I will be restarting soon and will be spending a lot of my time in December streaming the new island, so come hang out with me if you are interested in the process. I will also make sure to include some long play videos of me working on that island, so stay tuned for that in the future. Until then, thanks for watching and I'll see you all in the next one.